G'day viewers, welcome once more to WAINGAFAT Wednesday, where I tell you who am I not giving a fuck about today. And today I am not giving a fuck about anyone in Australia's Liberal National Party Conservative coalition or their supporters who still wants to say that the Peter Slipper affair was anything but a shitload of political hackery gone wrong. Now, for the rest of the world, or people who just don't understand how the Australian parliamentary system works, quick backgrounder. You get to form a government if you have the most seats in the lower house. That means you have the most votes, you can form a government, and the Queen's representative, the Governor-General, goes, oh yes, you do have the most, you can form a government. Now, the previous federal election, the sitting government did very, very badly. Or the Liberal National Party coalition did very well, whichever way you want to look at it. And the government lost their majority. But also, the Conservative coalition also did not gain a majority. Very close, but they didn't get there. And there was a whole bunch of independents. So, to form a government, you had to get a sufficient number of independents to say they would support you. And given how many of the independents were distinctly conservative, it looked good for the Conservatives, but when deals were done, enough of them supported the Progressive Labor Party, and they stayed in power. And it's been a shit fight ever since. Because, seriously, the opposition only had to make the Labor Party lose 1 or maybe 2 votes, and it would all be over. And they clearly, from their behaviour from the get-go, it's clear they thought that was a done deal and they could do it. Because they've just been very disruptive, very attacking, very negative. It's what you would expect of any political party in this situation. Now, a thorn in their side happened when a member of their own party, one Peter Slipper, who had a falling out with them, and there'd been questions about his behaviour in the past, although he'd been with the party for a very long time, and he was going to lose his seat. They were going to dump him at the next election. He actually did a deal with the government where he took the job of the Speaker of the House, which means his vote was no longer on the Liberal Party side because the Speaker can't vote. So that actually strengthened the position of the Labor Party because the Speaker had been a member of the Labor Party. And the Liberals lost their fucking mind. Now, that may sound complicated. Let's keep it simple. It was a classic example of just how sort of iffy and sleazy politics can get. It wasn't illegal, but let's not get into morality of who you're getting into bed with in something like this, because it's not pretty. I'll be the first to say it. This was a deal. This was a grubby political deal. Not illegal, but, you know, it's a little bit grubby, and the Liberals lost their fucking mind because it strengthened the government's position. So then they went hammer and tongs at the Speaker, saying he's unfit. Apparently they knew some stuff about him. And the most damaging bit that came out was one of his staffers accused him of sexual harassment. Now, I want to stress, it's not the case that I don't give a fuck about, because allegations of sexual harassment against someone in power are extremely serious, and I've seen far too many examples of people in power getting away with murder. If he was guilty, fuck the guy. But when it was allegations, before it had even got to court, the Liberals went hammer and tongs. He's not fit, he's not fit. And, you know, it was working in the court of public opinion. Hadn't gone to the court of law, but the court of public opinion, and the media were all over it. And there was a lot of pressure, and they resisted for a while. But weirdly, apparently the straw that broke the camel's back is that I'll step aside while this goes on. I'm not resigning, I'm not losing my job, which paid him. Actually, it was a shitload of money that he got for doing it as well, just by the by. The straw that broke the camel's back was when some of the discovery of the legal proceedings and some text messages between Slipper and Mr Ashby, the guy who was alleging the sexual harassment, where he said some disparaging things about women. And if you read the media talking in code, you may be worried it was really, really bad. What terrible things did he say about women's genitalia? Well, he said that, I think the phrase he used was unshelled muscles. A vagina looks like an unshelled muscle. Ew. I know a lot of women I know have copped to. Look, that's a gross but not altogether inaccurate description. And yes, it speaks of someone who has issues with women. But apparently that bit of bad PR was enough, and that was when he finally actually just full-on quit. Yeah. Points scored by the LNP coalition. And so the court case proceeded until today-ish, when the judge made a judgment and he threw it out with the type of language I don't think I've seen in an Australian court before. He actually just said, in the playground, I call bullshit right here. He actually said, in his view, that it wasn't just a case of there's not enough evidence to convict. The whole case was designed to do nothing but score political points against Slipper. It was not designed to right a wrong. It was designed to score political points. And he said to let it go on would actually bring the law into disrepute. And he also singled out the member of the LNP coalition who would be replacing Slipper, one Mal Brough, saying he was like elbow deep in the muck, egging this guy on and saying, let's do this and the other, which would directly contradict statements he's made before. I don't think I've seen an attempt at a smear campaign blow up in someone's face like this to quite this extent before. But the bit that really blew my mind, that made me write off the LNP altogether, because they're copping a hammering now. A lot of the media going, wow, you guys look really fucked now. And the government's going, the government's Attorney-General, who's, their premier legal spokesperson, if you don't know what that role in government is, one Nicola Roxon, who is not shy about head kicking. She's gone in hard and really laid it into them. And admittedly, Mr Ashby has suggested that he would like to appeal the case. Whether that actually ends up happening is another thing, because he thinks the judge's judgment was unreasonable, and I'm not surprised he feels like that, and it will be interesting to see if he does actually lodge an appeal and what ultimately happens. But yes, so the Attorney-General has gone in boots and all, and her opposite number in the opposition, the Shadow Attorney-General, proving what a great legal mind he is and how he thinks no one has a memory, George Brandis has said, she's bad. She shouldn't say stuff that's when it's still in front of the courts. That's bad to make big statements when it's still in front of the court. Listen, genius. First, it's not still in front of the courts. It got thrown the fuck out of the courts. If an appeal does actually get lodged, then the ball game changes. But just, on a minor technicality, dude, it's not in front of the courts. The courts said, get the fuck out of here with this bullshit. And second, after all the shit the Liberal National Party coalition pulled when it was just an allegation, the whole slinging mud, he's evil, he's wrong, because of allegations which a judge has now said was politically motivated bullshit, while you were throwing all that shit when it was just allegations and basically fucking ruining a guy's life, whether he deserved it or not. That's what you were doing. You say you shouldn't pass judgment before something's resolved in the courts? Seriously, if you can say shit that is that fucked up, look, politics is politics, okay? And I think it's worth pointing out, I firmly believe if the positions had been reversed, both parties would have acted exactly the same. If the Conservatives had a tiny margin and saw an opportunity for a deal like this, they would have taken it, and the Labor Party would have hammer and tongs done pretty much exactly the same sort of attacks as the Libs do. So I would like just to point out, this is just an example of how fucked politics is generally. But seriously, George Brandis, if you can say something that fucked up, that flies in the face of anything approaching integrity, honesty, consistency, you are seriously the sort of gutter politician I simply do not give a fuck about.